So, today's topic for Ask Algo is direct sourcing using Facebook. Now, Facebook is something that a significant number of us use personally. Use it in our personal life, our day-to-day life, for connecting with friends, for sharing cat pictures, for sending messages to each other, for following things you might like, so football, rugby, tennis, stars, but you might also use it for some professional purposes. You might also use it for following companies that you're interested in working for, or companies that you're interested in speaking to because they're in a similar industry to your own company. You might follow a certain type of technology or a certain type of skill. So if you're interested in, for example, in management texts and management theory, or if you're a technical person, then types of software language, for example, that might be something you follow. So we all use it so much. I'm admittedly a Facebook addict. I'm allowed to be a Facebook addict, I suppose, in a way, because of my job, because of what I do. But the thing that you need to remember about Facebook, when we're all using it, we all use it on a day-to-day basis. We're all using it pretty much now on our smartphones. So whether it's Android, whether it's iOS, an Apple device, whether it's on your iPad, any other tablet, other tablets are available. It's collecting a huge amount of data about you, and it's not that it's doing it without you realising, because it's actually the data that it's gathering is the information that you're putting into Facebook. So when you like something on Facebook, so say that you go onto the social media search Facebook page and like social media search, I highly recommend you do that, then Facebook makes a note of that, and as soon as you've done that, then it potentially means that you can be found because that you have actually liked that page. So it could be you like companies, as I said, you like football teams or rugby teams or tennis or whatever it might actually be. The more information you're putting on Facebook, then the more it's actually collecting about you. And it makes all this information available in quite a unique way called graph search, which I'll explain and talk a little bit more about. So, there's 4 things that I want to cover off today. With it, we'll take around probably 45 minutes max. 4 areas. The power of graph search. I want to do an introduction to Facebook graph search for you. Tell you a little bit more about how it works and how it operates in a very simple way to start finding information. And I guarantee you'll be very surprised about how you can use Facebook and the type of information that you can actually find using it. The second area that we'll cover off is just talking about Boolean searching using Facebook. Now, if you have tuned into previous webinars or webinars from us, or have attended other seminars, then you'll have a bit of an understanding about Boolean logic. You'll have a bit of understanding about and, or, and not. You can also use it to a degree in Facebook. There's certain things that we can do, but it's maybe not immediately obvious on Facebook how you would actually do that. The third thing I want to talk about today is public versus private. The problem that it causes, and actually the opportunity. Facebook, a lot of Facebook users do have their own personal Facebook locked down to such a degree that they don't share a huge amount of information about themselves. But there is a lot of publicly available information there, and we can actually do X-ray searches. We can do searches on information from that's contained within Facebook from Google. If you know what you're looking for, you can be quite specific. And I'll also talk a little bit about the ethics and about the morals about Facebook. There are a couple of points that you should be aware of before you start using Facebook for your recruitment, whether you use Facebook for sourcing, or whether you use Facebook advertising to attract people. There's a couple of things that you probably want to be aware of, make a note of, and probably consult your internal HR just to just to cover it off and make sure that you're not breaching any internal rules, particularly if you are working for a bigger organisation. A bigger organisation may have some fairly strict policies around what kind of information that you can actually use when you're recruiting and what kind of information you're not able to use. That's the challenge with Facebook. It does show you information that you could potentially, and that someone could use to potentially either positively or otherwise discriminate against a candidate. So it's something just to be aware of. And then the fourth thing I'll talk about is I'll talk to you about using Facebook messaging. We've used Facebook messaging extensively, so we're now becoming very aware of what the pitfalls are using it, but also of what the benefits of using it are. It's can be very powerful, but there are some restrictions, and you need to be aware of what you can do and what you can't do when you're using Facebook messaging. But also give you some advice on about the best type of message to use, but also how to deal with responses, because subject to the type of position you're recruiting for and subject to the type of person that you're targeting, you may get an interesting response back. Okay. I'm not going to rely too much on PowerPoint. Most of you know I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint anyway. This is going to be a very interactive, I'll show you as I go along type seminar. I'm not going to sit and just read to you. I'm going to run some live examples using Facebook and talk you through some of the things that we've worked on quite recently. First of all, you do have a decision to make. Now, it's whether you use your own profile or whether you set up a duplicate account, to use Facebook. It's down to your own personal choice. Remember, as long as your privacy settings are set, at the recommended setting, i.e. don't let anyone else apart from your friends see your wall posts, your pictures, that type of thing, then there isn't a massive issue with you using your own profile, because the only thing the person receiving any communication from you is going to be your name and your picture. It's your call. I've set up a duplicate account. There's a couple of reasons for that. We use the one Facebook account within our organisation for contacting candidates, just for consistency, just so that it is the same name, the same person that's contacting people. But it's really down to your own choice. Just while I'm thinking about it though as well, actually, what you do want to make sure is, and you can test this yourself, is make sure you can use Facebook on your own company network, as I know that some companies do have policies around that. If you can't use it, if you can't access it on your company network, of course you could do it from home, but you would probably want to try and make a business case to your manager or to your IT guys, as a valuable tool, as something you should be using and can be using as part of your recruitment strategies and your sourcing strategies. So, as I say, I've set up I set up a duplicate account. It is me, and it is genuinely me. The thing that you do need to be careful of when you're setting up a duplicate account, though, is you have to make the account look like it's a genuine account. Okay, Facebook are very antsy about this. Facebook are very nervous, and we have had problems in the past with an account that we had set up that didn't have any friends attached to the account. So Facebook assumed that it was a spamming account and shut the account down. And I don't know if anyone here has tried to contact Facebook and has tried to raise an issue with Facebook. It's virtually impossible to actually get any answer from them. So we reached a point where we couldn't use that account anymore. We couldn't speak to them to actually unlock the account, and we ended up having to create a bit of work by setting up another one. When we have set up that second account now, it does have friends. We've added some people onto it internally, just so that it is, as far as Facebook's concerned, it is an account that's being used for the purposes, of connecting with people and engaging with people. So it's just to be careful, and I'll talk a bit more about best practice when we talk about messaging. The big thing, moving on to sourcing and searching now, The big thing with Facebook graph search is that Facebook graph search is semantic. Okay, it's about patterns of language. It's about how you would think about actually finding something in real life, and that's the way that graph search works. Okay, so I've put some examples here on the PowerPoint. People who live, work, are, aged, friends with, like, live near, went to, come from, are male or female, are single or married. There's even things like age as well included in that as well. Something on the age side of things, it only lets you search ages for sensible reasons, so that it's not abused. For people who are over aged 18 and over, anybody who's under the age of 18 won't have their age listed on their profile. So if you do recruit junior members of staff at the age of 16, 17 and you were thinking about using it for this, you're not going to be able to find those individuals in that way. There are other ways you could potentially do it, but not in that way. So you can see this is me now talking about, going back to my first point about the amount of information that Facebook actually gathers about yourself. Facebook knows where you live, knows where you work if you put your employer information on, it knows who your friends are, it knows how old you are, it knows whether you're single or married, it knows whether you're male or female, it knows where you came from, it knows what you like, it knows what university potentially you went to. So think about all the information, look at your own profile, look at the information that's contained within that profile, and look at the information that you can add into the profile. If you can add information into a profile, then you can search for it, and that's basically basically the rule of thumb. Obviously, certain people only put certain information about themselves on. On my personal Facebook account, for example, I don't have my job title listed. I've got that I work for social media search, but I don't have my job title listed. Some people might put on their job title only, put on company. They might not put on the company information as well. So bear in mind, people don't always put on a massive amount of information about themselves. So just because for example, that someone works for a certain company in a certain position, it doesn't mean that they're going to have that information listed on Facebook. Okay. That said, when you're searching on Facebook, you will find people on Facebook with relevant job titles and relevant companies who aren't on LinkedIn, who are not on Twitter, who do not appear to be an active job seeker because they don't have a CV on CV databases, or they've not submitted their CV to you. So there is definitely an argument, and we would highly recommend this, depending on the role that you're working on, I suppose. Certainly Facebook has got to be one of the key tools in your box as an HR professional or as a recruitment professional. So, as I said, it's semantic. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to change screens now, and I'm going to go onto Facebook. If you bear with me a second, it changes over. Okay, and what I can see here is I've got the company Facebook profile that we use, and we're going to I'm going to talk you through the basics. I won't go into too much detail. I'm going to assume that most of you use Facebook personally, so will be able to work your way around the navigation. One thing to point out is that graph search is at the moment only available on desktop mode of Facebook. It's not available fully on mobile. I'm not 100% sure what date that's expected to be launched when it's coming out, but I do know it's imminent, and it is coming out very, very shortly. So at the moment, it has to be from your desktop. Again, with everything, with my Google head on, I highly recommend that you use Chrome. I don't particularly like using Internet Explorer for graph search. I think it slows down a little bit, and my personal preference for everything like this is that you use Chrome as your browser. So, first things first, where do we search? Okay, so you've got your Find Friends box here at the top, just above my head, just above my mugshot, and this is your graph search box. You've got Facebook's giving you some suggestions as soon as you click into that box. People I may know, my friends, photos of my friends before 2005, music I may like, movies I may like, nearby restaurants, and games I may like. So if I click, for example, on nearby restaurants, it's going to use the information that's available on my location. So it's picked up the fact that I'm currently in our London office, and it's telling me that there's Pret-a-Manger at Hudson's Place, there's Hard Rock Cafe at Old Park Lane, so it's automatically picking it up. And that's one very basic graph search. So as much as we've just selected nearby restaurants, we could have actually typed in nearby restaurants as well, and it would have done that as well. And you can see as soon as I type in keywords, it's bringing me up lots and lots of different suggestions. Nearby restaurants, shopping and retail places nearby, clothing stores nearby, and then other suggestions. Okay. I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to start now thinking about some specific searches. Okay. So I can do, and I'll use an example. I could run a search for people who live in Plymouth, just for talking's sake. As I said, it's semantic. It's literally how you would think or how you would potentially write down a search. You don't have to use Boolean. You don't have to just use keywords. You can literally type people who live in Plymouth, and it brings up everyone who matches who lives in Plymouth. But we don't only have to put one option in. Okay, we could do people who live in Plymouth and who are students. We could do that. So if you were running a campaign to target students, then you could do that. And that's picking up the fact that the person actually goes to a university. Okay. If I wanted to find people who are from Plymouth and who maybe don't live there at the moment, then I could just change my language and I can just use people who are from Plymouth instead. Okay. When I do people who are from Plymouth, then that updates. So I can see there, it's got people who live in Plymouth as well at the moment, but it's also got people, for example, this person who's from Plymouth but currently lives in London. I could actually include that in my search. I can do people who are originally from Plymouth and who live in London. I could even do and who are students. And I could even do and who are aged 18. It's not brought any results off of that. Okay, but there's not really any limit to the length of the string, the length of the graph search string that you can actually use in that box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a specific job search. So I'm going to do people who are project managers, okay, and who live in London. Okay, and that's bringing me up all project managers who live in London. Okay. I could change that. I could say people who work for IBM and who live in London and who are project managers, for example. Okay. Sometimes it does that. Sometimes it will just ask you just to confirm the company. Okay. And it's brought me up those results. So you could be really specific about your job title. You could be really specific about the company who you're targeting in your graph search. That you do need to be careful with things like age, obviously, and in terms of your searching. There's, depending on where you live, if you're in the UK, there's quite strict guidelines about using age. You're not able to use age in your recruitment process, so please do refer to your HR managers or your HR VPs about what information you can and can't use. I'm just going to change this search again. I'm actually going to be really vague, and I'm just going to bring it back to the people who are project managers search and who live in London. I'll just use another example just to show you and who are male, for example. Okay, so I've run this search. All of these guys are relevant to the job title project manager. Now, I've not stated what kind of project manager I'm looking for. If I was looking for somebody who was a technical project manager, then I would probably need to either search it by company and filter it down a little bit, or I could do a quick sift and just scan over who's who. Once we've actually run our graph search, what you'll see at the right hand side here, okay, is you've got loads and loads of different options. Now this is the quick option. You can filter by gender, relationship, current employer, job title, location, time period, current city, hometown, school, friendship, and name even. But if you then click on see more filters, then it's going to give you loads more options that you're able to search on. So school, hometown, gender, lots and lots and lots of information there. Okay, so I could put in an age range if I wanted to, or I could say a specific school. To remove, you can just do remove. You know, I could do people who live in London and who are project managers, and who went to a certain university. I could put that in if I wanted. University search is really easy. Men who live in London, the United Kingdom, who went to London School of Economics, say. So you can see there people who went to the London School of Economics. Okay. So you can add lots and lots of different options here. Likes, members of, apps they used, visited, checked in, people who use the check-in function. You could add in something there. That might be useful if you know that people, for example, go to networking events in a certain, say there's a certain bar or a certain coffee shop or a certain restaurant, that you know that there's specific events that are happening. So if you were recruiting, say, for I don't know, say it was a project manager and there was a project manager meet-up that happened every couple of weeks at a cafe round the corner from your office, then you could do a search for people who have checked in at that cafe and see if anyone is relevant, anyone is a project manager there. So that's an example there that you could use. You've got work in education, position, school, class year, concentration, degree, photos and videos tagged in, living, birth year, living near, hometown. So there's huge, this goes back, it's all of the information that you're loading onto Facebook, you can actually either search for using the graph search, or you can then filter down a little bit further. And then obviously once you've found a person, so if I use this chap just as an example, project manager at Geeks Limited, I could open this guy's profile, take a little bit of a look. Okay, it's not sharing a massive amount of information, but there is bits and pieces there, giving you a bit of an insight into the chap. I could then click. I've no idea whether Geeks Limited is an actual company or not, but it's a web design company. That takes me onto their page, and I could look at, for example, their likes to see who actually likes them. Look at their like statistics. If I then wanted to do though, find out who likes Geeks Limited, then I could do people who like Geeks Limited. Okay. Interesting profile pictures as always. This is a good thing about doing a live demo. You never know what kind of pictures you're going to get. There we go again. Okay. You've got loads and loads of information there, and it could be that these people are potentially good candidates as well. So be creative. Think about, the various different things that people are actually, going to like. It could be that people who are web developers do like Geeks Limited on Facebook because they're very good at sharing a lot of information. They're very good at, putting out industry trends or tools and tips and techniques, that type of thing. Okay. Think about it in the same way as people. What's the reason why people follow on Twitter? It's the exact same reasons potentially on Facebook. That's exactly the same reasons. They're interested. They want to engage, and the whole reason they're interested is that they could be, potentially a potential employee or interested in that industry. So that's an introduction to graph search. As I say, play about with graph search. Lots and lots of different things that you can actually search for. Lots and lots of different combinations. You'll find combinations that work for you. You'll find combinations that are useless. One, just a bit of a watch out on it. It does occasionally get a little bit antsy and doesn't work properly. I think it's something related to the cookies and the browser settings. What we do find is just if we go in and then clear our cookies and clear our browsing history, if we find that it doesn't work and it doesn't match properly, then that normally resolves it. Okay, so that's a basic a basic graph search. But what about Boolean? As I was talking about. Well, let me just go back to that search. So I'll just do my people who are project managers and live in London again search. Okay. I can't actually do a proper Boolean search here. I can do bits and pieces. I could do nots, I could do people who are project managers and who are not from London, I could do that. There is some certain things I can do, but you're kind of limited as to your Boolean options when you're using graph search. But I can do some basic Boolean, but I need to do it from a different screen, and it's not immediately obvious where you would actually do that from. I'm interested in the Find Friends box here. If I click on that, okay, then it's taking me to the people you may know options. Okay, normal. Okay, absolutely fine. However, at the right hand side, if I scroll down, it's actually giving me lots and lots of different options. Okay, it's giving me I can search on hometown, current city, high school, college, university, employer, or graduate school. In these boxes, I can actually do some Boolean, very basic Boolean searches. Okay, so let's pick another city. So let's say San Diego. Okay, that brings up everyone who's San Diego. If I then wanted to put in another option there, though, as well, is I can just hit the cross, and I could put in, say, I wanted also New York. Okay, then I can do that. And say I wanted to do Las Vegas. I'm just picking random American cities. Okay, so that's bringing up people who live in either San Diego or New York or Las Vegas. Something that you can't really do in a graph search. And I can do this for all these boxes, all the same options. I can do it for high school, I can do it for college or university, I can do it for employer. Okay, so say I wanted to find all the Apple employees, I can do that. I can then clear that box, I can type in Google, if I wanted to find all the Google employees as well. All the Microsoft employees. So I've found there, by doing a very basic Boolean search, I've found people who live in San Diego or New York or Las Vegas and work for either Apple or Google or Microsoft. Okay, I could take that a step further, I could put in a graduate school, so I could say it was MIT. It's actually the wrong... the right thing there. Try that one again. Yeah. For some reason it's not bringing that up. Say, I don't know, say the University of California instead. Any results? No, it's not bringing up any results there. But that's the kind of thing that you could actually do. So you can build fairly big searches, fairly not particularly complex, but quite efficient searches doing Boolean. Now the options on this screen are more limited. You're not able to search on the same information that you can when you're doing a graph search, and you're not able to filter down using the same filters as you can on a graph search as well, on a graph search, or on the filters for the graph search. Okay, cool. So now that we've been able to do graph searches, and now that we've been able to do Boolean searches, just to re-emphasise the point, I think I've said this a couple of times, but have a think about the type of information that you can use on Facebook to find people. Okay, so for example, we recently completed a piece of work for a Scottish charity, okay, where we were looking, they were looking to find and engage with support workers, so people who would be coming in and supporting young adults and young children who had learning difficulties. The information that can be found on Facebook around employers, particularly when it comes to maybe more sensitive jobs, people perhaps won't put on a lot of information about their current employer and about their current job. So sometimes you do need to think outside the box. What we did do in this case is, and I'm not going to give any information away about the client, but what we had to think about was, well, what other charities or what other organisations would these people be involved in? And what we did is we actually ran Facebook Graph Search, and we thought to ourselves, okay, well, if somebody's somebody's potentially going to be interested in working for an autism charity, then they could be working for a children's charity just now. If they're working for a children's charity just now, there's a 99% chance that they're going to have liked that page on Facebook. So what we did was we did a search. We pulled together a list of similar charities who were in that sphere and in that local area. We ran Facebook graph searches for people who like those charities, and I'll just use I'll use Childline just as an example. Okay, but you could do people who like Childline and who live in live in Paisley. I'll just talk about my hometown. So that gives you a list of people who live in the area, but who like the organisation. It could be that either think outside the box with this. It could be that these people like that charity because they work in that area. You can see there actually there's a chap there, Dale Irvin, who likes Childline. He's a sessional youth worker at Renfrewshire Council. So immediately that's brought up somebody relevant who could be a potential target candidate for you. So think it that we're just using that example there so that you actually think about the type of information, and think about the information that people put on, and think about how you can actually search it and think outside the box. I'm a big fan of just coming up with different ideas and mapping out in a mind map the type of companies, the type of organisations, the type of things that people will like, and just run different kinds of searches and you'll find something that will work for you. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is private and public information. I am going to talk a little bit about the ethics side first. This is a big watch out. depending on the type of organisation that you work for, the type of company, I do highly recommend it, just so you're not getting yourself into any trouble. Cover your backside a little bit, and make sure that you speak to someone, either your line manager or your HR manager, before you start using Facebook for recruiting. Okay. Now, couple of reasons for that. The first one is actually your company may have a specific policy that means they do not use Facebook for recruitment, and we have seen that recently with a couple of our clients where we couldn't source people from Facebook because their policy, their HR policies or their recruitment policies specifically stated that they weren't able to use it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there is a massive amount of personal information, okay, that's on profiles. So from someone's profile, you can gauge, their ethnic background, their race, their age, their sex, their sexuality, and there could be other information there. As an organisation, you do need to protect yourself against any potential discrimination claims, so just be very, very, very careful about how you're searching and what you're using. I'm by no means saying that anyone would discriminate. I know that you wouldn't. However, it's about actually protecting your organisation and making sure that no one could raise some kind of spurious claim just based on the fact that they are recruiting from Facebook. The third thing on the ethics side, I suppose, as well as, and it's something we've came across again quite recently with some clients. Actually, is it appropriate to be using Facebook for recruitment? Facebook is a personal site. Facebook is where people personally interact with each other. In fact, one client was talking about it the other day, and they said, well, we shouldn't be looking at people's profiles because that's what they do in their personal life. It's got nothing to do with work. I'm not. My view, I suppose, because I work in this field, my view is that people should be savvy enough to protect themselves on Facebook. People should lock down their privacy settings so that a potential employer can't see any information that could be potentially damaging for the candidate or potentially embarrassing. I think if people, my personal Facebook profile is locked down. So you can find me certainly, but you can't see anything really about me. You can't see any of my pictures. So would I have a massive problem based on that with a potential employer looking at my Facebook profile? No, I wouldn't, because I've been sensible enough taking the steps to make sure that they can't see anything that I wouldn't want them to see. My personal life on Facebook is my personal life. The second thing though as well is that there still can be a little bit of a lack of understanding in the public domain about Facebook privacy settings. Now, people most people do set it so that you can't see anything, but there are quite a lot of candidates, and it's amazing what you can find. I won't use any examples because I wouldn't want to potentially embarrass anyone, but there is some bizarre information that we've found about potential candidates, on behalf of employers. Purely because the person hasn't actually locked down their Facebook profile and hasn't changed their privacy settings. If someone, there is an argument about public information online. If someone chooses to make that information public about themselves, then that's their choice. I think you need to be very, very careful with it. I think you need to bear in mind that people do use it for personal reasons and don't actually, A, don't potentially snoop into personal information too much, but B, you probably want to be a little bit careful about the type of information that you're passing on internally about people. Okay, great. So the other thing though about public information on Facebook, and I'm just now going to go back to my Chrome. Bear with me a second. Is actually that Google, in the same way as Google indexes LinkedIn, indexes Twitter, indexes all the publicly available information, there is a lot of publicly available information still available on Facebook. One example of this is is events. So Facebook events, I use events for personal reasons. I arrange parties, arrange dinners, arrange catch-ups with friends on Facebook events, because it's a good way of keeping in touch with multiple people. But companies do use Facebook events, or charities, organisations. They use it in a variety of different ways, and the majority of Facebook events are actually public. And that means that we could run a Google string against them, an X-ray search. So just a very basic example, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I could type in facebook.com/events, and then I could search for something. So say I wanted to search, I'll use the example I was looking at earlier, Cisco, for example. So it could be you're recruiting for a Cisco position, and what that does is it brings up events that are potentially relevant. So we've got Cisco CCNA, Cisco Partner Summit, that's really interesting, Cisco Connect in Nairobi, and you could take that a little bit further by, if I wanted it to be in New York, and see if there's any events that come up, anything that's relevant in New York. And you can, put some more information. You could use your full range of Google searches. You could do an in-URL search for Cisco, see if there's anything that comes up where Cisco is actually mentioned in the URL of the event. Okay, so don't be restricted. You can just search for New York, for locations. So lots and lots of different things there. So have a think about the different types of public information that can be found. Have a play about and see if there's anything that you can actually find that would be of use and would be of interest to you. Again, it's just like anything. The amount of information that people are actually putting online on Facebook is quite interesting and is quite diverse. Okay, so be creative about it and don't restrict yourself. Okay, cool. So last but not least, I just want to talk a little bit about messaging. So just take about another 5 minutes or so. We do find Facebook messaging an effective way of contacting people. We have had success stories. We've had some that have maybe not quite gone as right, but there are a couple of watch outs I'm quite happy to share with you, and to make sure that you're kind of doing the best thing that you possibly can. Now, I'm just going to talk now about the basics around messaging first. Facebook messaging, unless you're a friend with someone on Facebook, then you're not going to be able to send them a message that would go directly into that person's mailbox. And I'll show you a couple of examples of this. If I click, here, then what you can see is I've actually got two inboxes. I've got my other box and I've got my inbox. If you try and send a message on Facebook to someone who isn't your friend on Facebook, then it's going to go into their other box. When that message goes into their other box, that person doesn't get a notification either on their desktop or on their mobile, and they don't get an email notification either. So you're actually relying on that person clicking into the other box, to actually see that message. And believe you me, 99% of people won't click into that other box because they don't even know it exists. Okay. So you can click there, but if I click back in inbox, then you can see some messages there that we've been working with clients on. Okay. So Facebook messaging, if you did want the message though to actually get into someone's mailbox, sorry, I'm just going to try and mute. There's just a little bit of feedback coming through. If anyone's not muted their phone on the end of the line, could you mute that for me just now? I'm getting some feedback coming through it. Great. messaging, if you do want to make sure that a message gets to someone, then you want to send a paid message. So if I click here, if I want to send a new message to someone, okay, say I found someone, say I found Don Raj, this chap, say I did want to send a message to him, I can click on message, and lets me compose my message, but I'm getting the warning message, your message will go to Don's other folder because you are connected to him on Facebook. If I then click and see more though, it then gives me the option to send this message directly to his inbox for 63 pence. Okay, for the vast majority of people, it is only 63 pence. For celebrities, I think you can pay a tenner to message people and guarantee that it gets into their inbox. But for the majority of people, it is only 63 pence. Okay, for you to message. I guarantee that gets into the person's inbox. Okay. So in terms of best practice and in terms of what you can do and what you can't do, similar rules to normal messaging. Don't go into too much detail. Don't create barriers. Your aim here is to create a conversation with someone. So you don't want to put too many obstructions. We highly recommend that you don't include job specs, links, anything like that within your messages. You want to encourage someone to share information with you that you can then use to have a proper conversation. So keep it light, keep it very informal. Bear in mind who you're speaking to and who your target audience is. Adapt your language correctly. Be prepared to receive some interesting replies, depending on the demographic. I'm being perfectly honest, we have had a couple of abusive messages from Facebook because people do get a bit of a fright and don't actually appreciate or don't realise that people can find them and contact them on Facebook in this way when they're not their friend. Bear in mind, some people might be really polite about it, actually. People might just be a bit surprised that you have actually tried to contact them through Facebook as well. So just keep the tone light, similar messages to what you would be using for contacting through other methods, but just bear in mind your responses may vary in terms of quality and maybe a little bit different than what you would expect to receive from other sources. Okay. Second thing, just to watch out for messages, it's not suitable and not appropriate for any massive volume campaigns. Okay, the terms and conditions of Facebook messaging are that you can't use it for spamming people. Now, even though for recruitment purposes, I wouldn't define that as spamming. I would define that as a quality message and something that the person would actually want to see. Facebook's view of it is very different, and we do find that there are problems if we have in the past had occasional problems where we've been running a volume campaign for a client and we haven't been able to initially reach out until we realised that we couldn't send batch messages, we couldn't send 10 at a time without Facebook temporarily stopping us from doing it. So the workaround for that is just, if you do have multiple people that you want to contact through Facebook, just do a couple at a time, no more than 2, and then try 2 maybe an hour later. If you're working on a high volume of candidates, that can be quite time consuming and it can be a little bit bitty, and you're probably better off putting your efforts into trying to find the person somewhere else and trying to engage with them in a different way. So that's the kind of massive big watch out. The other watch out, just from I suppose a practicality point of view, is that there isn't any batch invoicing on Facebook. So every time you send a message of 63%, 63 pence rather, and the 63 pence charge will appear multiple times on your credit card statement. So I don't think your accountant will like you very much when you turn up with 60, potentially 100 Facebook receipts on your expenses claim. So it's just something to watch out for and something to be careful of. Okay. The third thing as well is bear in mind that messages can sometimes go into someone's email account. It's not guaranteed though that somebody will get notified of a message through an email account. Generally speaking, they will only get notified of a message in their email account if they haven't answered that message or haven't viewed it on their desktop device or on their mobile device. There are settings, some people do change their settings so that they get immediately notified by email. There are tools and settings that allow you to do that, but generally speaking, the only way initially that someone is going to be able to see the message is if they log on to Facebook on their device or log on through the desktop. Bear in mind, Facebook is the type of program though that people only log into LinkedIn, potentially once a day. People are using Facebook on an ongoing basis. So, I know myself personally, when I'm on the train coming into work or when I'm travelling to London, I am on Facebook a considerable amount, and I think it's safe to say that a lot of people do use Facebook in the same way. So the chances are your message is going to get to someone. If you pay that 63 pence, it is going to get in front of someone. Just think very carefully about the type of language you're using to try and encourage that person to engage with you, and try and encourage them to get in touch and get in contact with you. Okay, so thank you very much indeed. That's all I'm going to cover off this afternoon. As always, please reach out to me. Please connect with me. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Please, if you're not already connected with me, please send me a connection request. More than happy to chat away on that. I'm on Twitter as well, so there will be quite a lot of hints and tips on Twitter about various sourcing things, so please follow me there as well. But likewise, any questions, anything I can help with, please don't hesitate to give me a call or drop me a line. Thanks very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.